Good evening, a warm welcome to all of you to the webinar series hosted by Advocates Association Bengaluru. We have with us today a very special speaker and a very distinguished jurist, Honorable Mr. Justice Raju Varadarajulu Ravindran, former Judge, Supreme Court of India. My Lord, we are privileged to have you with us today. Welcome to the webinar. Now, I take the privilege of introducing His Lordship to our viewers. Honorable Mr. Justice Ravindran holds a bachelor degree in science and law. He enrolled as an advocate in the year 1968. After a vast practice for 2.5 decades, His Lordship was elevated as the judge of the High Court of Karnataka. Later, in the year 2004, His Lordship became the Chief Justice of Madhya Pradesh High Court. In 2005, he was elevated to the Apex Court. His Lordship has witnessed several high-profile cases during his judgeship. To name a few, OBC reservation, 1993 Bombay Blast case, Krishna Godavari Basin dispute are a few to mention. My lords, on behalf of Advocates Association Bengaluru, I extend a warm welcome to you. Over to you, my lords.
Thank you, Trivikram. You want me to start, or are there any other formalities?
Your lordship may kindly start the session.
Thank you. Good evening, Rangnath. Good evening, all the office bearers of Advocates Association and dear friends, both young and old. I hope all of you are safe during these COVID days and taking all the safety measures. Let me at the outset congratulate the Advocates Association Bangalore for organizing this innovative program that is a continuing webinar for the benefit of the lawyers and law students. It gives me great pleasure as a member of the Advocates Association Bangalore to participate in this program. Today, we will consider and discuss a subject which is of general importance: anomalies in law and justice. You see, what are anomalies? Inconsistencies in law, contradictions and absurdities in law, and similarly, inconsistencies, contradiction and absurdities in justice. These are anomalies which we will consider. They abound in our laws and in our judicial decisions. Some are perceived as anomalies by lawyers, judges, and litigant public. But in regard to some, the lawyers and judges accept them as normal happenings, whereas the litigants and general public consider them as anomalies. We will consider both. Some anomalies cannot be corrected at all, but that is because of the inherent limitations of the legal system. Some of them are capable of being corrected, can be explained with reference to legal or moral principles. Luckily, many of them are rectifiable, but unfortunately, many anomalies are not noticed, or if noticed, not corrected, and even when corrected, may give rise to further anomalies. Such anomalies have a bearing on rendering of justice, and if they are left unrectified, undermine the rule of law. They create confusion in the minds of public, lawyers, and judges, and complicate the judicial process. In extreme cases, they lead to an unwarranted and uncharitable description of law as an ass. They also lead to despair and dissatisfaction among litigants, in turn affecting the credibility of the entire institution, that is judiciary and the bar. You know, anomalies occur mainly due to three reasons. The first is mistakes, errors, omissions, commissions by the legislature on one hand. If they are committed by the legislature, they become anomalies in law. And if omissions, commissions, errors are committed by the judiciary, by judges, they become anomalies in justice. Now, this is one of the main reasons for the anomalies, that is omissions and commissions by the judges and by the legislature. There is also two other reasons for anomalies arising. The second reason is the existing difference between concepts of morality and concepts of law, which are molded by political, economic, and social necessities. The third reason, of course, is the limitations of the legal system itself. Some of the most frequently encountered anomalies, I will list them first. I will list them first as anomalies attributable to legislature. I will then enumerate the anomalies that are attributable to the judiciary, and I will then enumerate the anomalies inherent in the rule of law, which are not capable of effective correction at all. These are the three kinds of anomalies I will be referring. I will be enumerating them, but for want of time, I will choose only, as by way of example, one or two of the anomalies under each category. And even though I may enumerate the entire list for the purpose of knowing the width of the anomalies. No, first, let me enumerate the anomalies attributable to legislature. The first anomaly is the anomaly arising by reason of failure by the legislature to review and revise enactments, that is statutes, periodically to take note of inflation and other developments. This is one of the most important things, because legislators are very busy with their other activities. They do not consider it very, very important to attend to amending enactments and making enactments, though primarily that is their job. That is the first thing. The second anomaly that is also attributable to the legislature, and therefore an anomaly relating to law, is anomalies arising by reason of legislators' failure to improve and update laws by taking note of the changing needs of the society. What are the needs of the society? Whether the existing laws meet those needs or whether they require changes is something that is a job which is to be done. Because it is not done, it leaves several gaping anomalies in law. The third is anomalies arising out of defective drafting of statutes. Drafting is an art. Drafting requires a lot of experience. Drafting requires knowledge, wisdom. But a stage has come, you cut and paste enactments. You borrow from another state, you borrow from another country, or you do some mismatch and you have a draft. And nobody discusses it, nobody considers it, laws are made. You will find a lot of defects arising because of it. That is the anomalies. That's the anomaly arising out of law. Now, there are some more. I will not, enumerate them because of time factor. Let me next enumerate the anomalies attributable to judiciary, a very tricky and very touchy subject, but I will try to deal with it in a manner possible that I don't give offense to anyone. The first is anomalies arising out of the personal philosophies and idiosyncrasies of judges. This is the major anomaly, which, when I say anomaly, I am not looking at it from the point of a judge or a lawyer who are accustomed to anomalies, but I am looking at it from the common man's point of view. How a common man, how the citizen looks at the judiciary, looks at decisions, looks at laws, and how does he feel about them. That is how I would be dealing. And therefore, one of the most important anomalies in regard to, under the head of anomalies of justice, is anomalies arising out of the personal philosophies and idiosyncrasies of judges. The second is anomalies arising out of erroneous judicial interpretation of statutes. There are good laws made, but the judges either ignore them out of ignorance, oversight, or misinterpret them. That leads to anomalies. Then anomalies arising from not following the binding decisions of the Supreme Court and high courts. There is a decision of the Supreme Court, there is a decision of your own court, but you don't follow it. Result is chaos. You have two views on the same subject, leading to chaos. That is also an anomaly. The litigants cannot understand how there can be confusion. They know that this is the legal provision and this should be the result. How can there be two results? Now, this is the anomaly the party is facing. The fourth is anomalies arising from judgments per incurium. Oversight. Totally statute is ignored. Totally binding decisions are ignored. Law is laid down unless it is declared as per incurium by a coordinate bench or a higher bench. It continues to be binding law. It may be wrong law, it may be disastrous law, it may be, but still it is binding on everyone until declared. This is the next anomaly. Then we have other anomalies, like anomalies arising from ipsy-dixy orders in PILs. You know, courts say, let there be light, let there be food for everyone, let all the COVID patients be treated in the best possible manner in 5-star hospitals. Yes, everything we can say, but whether it is possible, whether it is feasible, whether it is enforceable, whether it is supervisable, nobody bothers about them. And when such orders are made, it creates, I tell you, lot of havoc and lot of anomalies. The next is anomalies arising from discretionary non-adjudicatory orders. Sometimes, you know, there is no adjudication, case is being dismissed. They will say, all right, consider, let the trial court dispose it of within 6 months. The High Court does not know how many judges, how many cases are on the trial court's file. You may be having already 100 important matters, already 50 matters where directions have been given. If you go on adding in non-important cases merely because a senior counsel like Rangnath appears and says, my lord, direct that the case should be decided immediately, and he decides, what happens to the other urgent matters? Now, these are also anomalies arising because parties are asking, how is it happening? My case is more important, but some unimportant case is going on. These are also anomalies. So you have a lot of anomalies arising from the judges, judgments, and judicial actions. We will only consider some of them again from on account of the time factor. Then we have the third kind of anomalies, which is neither due to the legislature nor due to the judiciary. These are anomalies inherent in rule of law, which are not capable of effective correction. I will give some examples. One is, the principles of law being different from principles or morals, and that creates a lot of problems because many individuals, that is the citizens, the non-lawyers, cannot distinguish between law and morality, principles of morality. They consider law should be same as morality, and if it does not happen, many a time law is totally, separated from morality. Then they feel upset. Now this requires to be dealt with, but it cannot be managed because it is going to continue. This anomaly is going to continue. Then anomalies arising out of generality of law. See, when laws are made, law is not made with reference to an individual or with reference to a particular situation, but it is made for one and all. But when you apply them to a case or apply them to an individual or apply them to a specific, situation, you may find that it leads to anomalous results. That is also something that is difficult to rectify. I will also refer to it in a little detail later. Then there is one more anomaly, which of course I will not be touching today for want of time. That is anomaly arising from application of different scales for rich and powerful and for poor and downtrodden. This is a very, very wretched situation. I hope that sometime we have time to discuss that in greater detail. Now, you see, some anomalies which I have referred, legislature alone can rectify them. Some anomalies which I have referred, only the judges in their decisions can rectify them. Some of the other anomalies can be rectified maybe by a kind of cooperation among the judges and lawyers. We will again consider them a little later. Now, just to start with, I will start by the anomalies arising from the personal philosophies and idiosyncrasies of judges. You know, the outcome of litigation should depend on the facts of the case and the legal position. Nobody can doubt that. If so-and-so is the fact and so-and-so is the law, so-and-so should be the decision. But is it happening? In many cases, it depends upon several other factors. What are these factors? Let me refer to some of them. Evidence that is led in. You see, the party may not let in the best evidence. The lawyer may not be able to place the best evidence for several reasons. The ability of the advocate to present the case, that may also be a reason why a decision may go otherwise. The knowledge, wisdom, and ability of the judge. The judge may not be able to understand the point that is being made and he may wrongly decide the case, or he may have a view of his own and therefore he may decide it. And therefore, and it is not only the wisdom, knowledge of the trial judge, it is the trial judge, the appellate judge, the second appellate judge, that is High Court and Supreme Court. Anywhere and everywhere mistakes can occur. Now, this leads to a lot of uncertainty, lot of inconsistency. Now, let me now come to directly to the personal philosophies of judges. You know, you go to court, you walk in the corridor, or you go to the Bar Association. Well, I was a member of the Bar Association. I was also a part of it. I was also not talking. What were we saying? We used to call some as acquitting judges and some as convicting judges, some as progressive judges, progressive liberal judges, some as conservative judges, strict judges, some as pro-government judges, some as anti-government judges, some as pro-PIL judges, PIL ಏನ್ ಆರ್ಡರ್ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ, some as anti-PIL. ಎಲ್ಲ PIL judge will feel petitioner as an axe to grind, ಯಾರ ಹತ್ರನೂ ದುಡ್ಡು ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ PIL ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಡಿಸ್ಮಿಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. anti-PIL judge, pro-landlord judge, pro-tenant judge. ಇವಾಗ ಅಷ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಟೆನೆಂಟ್ ಕೇಸಸ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಬಟ್ಟೆ. ಅಂಡ್ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಆಸ್ ಬ್ರಾಂಡೆಡ್, ಇವನು ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಲಾರ್ಡ್ ಜಡ್ಜು, ಇವನು ಟೆನೆಂಟ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್, ಇವ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಕೇಸ್ ಏನೇ ಕೇಸ್ ಇರ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇರ್ಲಿ ಎವಿಕ್ಷನ್ ಆರ್ಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಇವ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ಬರ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟೇ ಕೇಸ್ ಇರ್ಲಿ ಡಿಸ್ಮಿಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ದಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ದಿ pro landlord and pro tenant judges. We have now also pro labor judges and pro management judges. We have large altered judges and miserly judges. ನೀವು ಮೋಟರ್ ಆಕ್ಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ ಕೇಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಅಕ್ವಿಷನ್ ಕೇಸ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಏನೋ ಇವನು ಅವ್ನ ಜೋಬಿಯಿಂದ ಕೊಟ್ಟಂಗೆ ಸಾಯ್ತಾನ್ರಿ ಇವನು ಅಂತ. ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಹರ್ಡ್, ವಿ ಆಲ್ ನೋ. These are the large ordered judges are those who give good compensation, large compensation. ತಗೊಳ್ರಿ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರಿ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಇದೇ ತರ ರಿಲೀಫ್ ಓರಿಯೆಂಟೆಡ್ ಜಡ್ಜಸ್, ನೆಗೆಟಿವ್ ಜಡ್ಜಸ್, ಇವನು ರಿಲೀಫೇ ಕೊಡೋದಿಲ್ರಿ ಇವನು. ಯಾಕೆ ನೋಡಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ವೆರೈಟಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಜಡ್ಜಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಅಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ ದೀಸ್ ನೇಮ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಗಿವನ್ ಟು ದಿ ಜಡ್ಜಸ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಕಾರಿಡಾರ್ಸ್, ಇನ್ ದಿ ಬಾರ್ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಷನ್ಸ್. ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಎ ವೆಲ್ ರೆಕಗ್ನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್. ಫಾಲಿನ್ ಆರಿಮನ್ ಅವರು ಬುಕ್ಕಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಯಾರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್ ದೇಸಾಯಿ, ಎ ವೆರಿ ಪ್ರಾಮಿನೆಂಟ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್. ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವ್ರ ಬುಕ್ಕಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ತರ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. He simply abhorred landlords as a class. His other obsession was that he could not decide, and he would never decide in a single case in favor of capital, that is management, or in favor of the employer. In Justice Desai's social agenda, landlords and employers were a class who could never succeed, who must not succeed while he sat in the court. ಆ ಥರ ಕೆಲವು ಜಡ್ಜಸ್ ಓಪನ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ನಾನು ಹೀಗೆಪ್ಪ ನನ್ನ ಆರ್ಡರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೀಗೆ ಅಂತ. You see, please remember, these are all honest judges, these are all good judges, these are all well-read judges, these are all eminent judges, but still they have prejudices, they have biases, they have philosophies, personal philosophies, which mold their judgments. In spite of their knowledge, in spite of their commitment, the result comes in a particular manner. Adanna, the litigant cannot understand this. This is the problem. Lawyers can understand. Aitu ivar munde hodre idu chambu ivattu. Yes, people know. Ivar munde hodre agatte. Yes, they know. They take it. Avrige adu dina abhyasa agogide. Hinga ankondu they will go. But what about the litigant? His life, his liberty, his property is the subject matter. So he feels very perturbed about this anomaly. Ivar munde bandre ee tara agutte, avaru munde bandre idenri idu anyaya. See, a litigant may win in the trial court. Aita, trial court nalli win adre mugidoyta illa. He may go in appeal and lose the appeal. He may win in the trial court and also in the first appellate court, but he may lose in the second appeal. On the other hand, he may lose in all these courts may lose in the Supreme Court. The hierarchy of appeals and revisions lead to reversal and further reversals. It is said that whenever there is an appeal, as provided in law, there is a 50% chance of the appeal being reversed by an appellate court, and there is another 50% chance in regard to further appeal to the High Court, and another 50% of reversal in the Supreme Court. In fact, it is said that if there is a higher court, if there is an appeal against the judgment of the Supreme Court, then 50% of the judgments of the Supreme Court will also be set aside. Yaake ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, there is no certainty. This lack of certainty is something the litigant cannot understand. He says, ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಇರೋದು, ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಲಾ ಇರೋದು, ಯಾಕೆ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಒಂದೊಂದು ತರ ಯಾಕೆ ಡೀಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ? ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಐ ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್ ಎ senior advocate in the Supreme Court, Mr. C.K. Daftri, used to say, filing and seeking special leave before the Supreme Court is a worse gamble than horse racing and lottery anta ಹೇಳೋರು. So this is what is is a puzzle as far as the litigant is concerned. When similar cases go before different benches of the judges, it may give rise to different decisions. As a result of the differences in perception among the judges, many cases on similar facts end up with different results with different judges. In fact, I would like to give you a rather interesting example. See, National Judicial Academy, Bhopal, conducted a test to ascertain whether the personal philosophy of the judge plays a role in the decision making, whether his upbringing, his background, does it have any effect on they wanted to see. Therefore, Academy gave a set of facts relating to a case involving rape to a batch of senior judges attending a workshop and asked them to write a judgment. Now, they gave the facts. These were the facts. A victim, provocatively dressed, was walking alone on a public road during late hours of the night and did not object to some playful teasing by two youngsters. The victim subsequently complained that the said two youngsters became friendly with her and then raped her. Now, this was the case. Now, the the facts also showed that the evidence established that there was actually, in fact, sexual intercourse. Now, 51% of the judges, the about 80 judges participated in that test, and about I think 41 or so wrote judgment convicting the accused of rape. But what was surprising was 49% of the judges acquitted the accused by recording a finding that the victim's conduct and action clearly indicated consent on her part, and therefore the complaint act was not against her will. Now imagine, same facts, same specific facts given to 80 judges, and 41 judges decide that there was rape and conviction. 39 judges, just by one or two, decide that the persons were not guilty. Is it possible? Now imagine how will a woman who is the subject, who is the victim, will feel in the same circumstances when the matter comes up before the judges who acquitted the case. Now this is the unfortunate thing. You see, I need not tell you, I can give examples. There are examples galore. One example, another example that comes to mind is the famous 377 case. 377 case, you remember, came before the Delhi High Court in the year 2009 before, if I am correct, Justice A.P. Shah and Muralidhar. They said that, they decriminalized homosexual acts involving consenting adults. But what happened? In 213, the matter came up, the matter was taken before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said no. They said the law is, they upheld the validity of the law. They reversed the judgment. Then what happened? In 2018, the matter came before 5 judges of the Supreme Court, and they said again, they decriminalized the consensual acts. Now, where do we stand? If the case had come before another set of 5 judges, instead of the 5 judges who dealt with the case, the result could have been different. All that I am saying is the personal perceptions, personal philosophies, whether you are liberal, whether you are conservative, whether you are progressive, whether you want to be very, very cautious, whether you want to interfere, whether you don't want to interfere, you want to widen fundamental rights, or you want to strictly follow the fundamental rights. All this will have an effect on the decision. Lawyers and judges will consider these changes as very normal. But imagine the common man, imagine the litigant, how he cannot digest this anomaly. They expect that where the facts are same, where the law is same, the decision should be same, whoever be the judge. They are unable to understand how the same case can end up in success if it goes before Judge A, and failure if it goes before Judge B. They are perplexed because, according to them, a decision is based on fact, on law, and should not be based on the personal philosophies of judges. One litigant some time back asked me, if decisions should depend upon the philosophy and inclinations of judges, then why should I not myself choose the judge? Why should I not go to a judge who is liberal, who is going to, if it is a land acquisition case, why should I not say I will go to Judge X who gives good compensation? If it is a motor accident case, why should I not say I will go to a judge who will give compensation? Why should I knowingly go before a judge with my case, with a case which I would have won or which I would have got more compensation, take it before a judge and lose or get lesser compensation? What is this kind of justice? This is what the common man wants to know. This is the anomaly that is arising from the personal philosophies of judges. You see, it is, in fact, lawyers also realize it. You know what they do? It's well known that many lawyers wait for a particular subjects to be assigned to a particular judge as per roster to have his case listed for hearing to argue his case. On the other hand, if an experienced advocate notes that a judge's philosophy does not suit his client's interest, he tries to avoid hearing. Defects cure ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಹಂಗೆ ಇರ್ತದೆ. 6 ತಿಂಗಳಾದ್ರೇನು 1 ವರ್ಷ ಆದ್ರೇನು ಡಿಫೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಇಟ್ಟಿರೋದು. ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಬಂದ್ರೆ, ರಿಲೀಫ್ ಕೊಡೋ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಇಮ್ಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ ಹೋಗಿ ಡಿಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಪೋಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಸೋದು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಇದು ಬೇಕೇ? ಇದು ಈ ತರ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕೇ? ಜಡ್ಜಸ್ ಇದರಿಂದ how does, this is okay for the lawyers, they understand. The litigant does not understand. This means that, when some judges are considered as pro something, there is a clamor for cases relating such subject being listed before them by those who perceive that the judge's philosophy would help them. ಒಬ್ಬರು ಅಕ್ವಿಟಿಂಗ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಡಿಫೆನ್ಸ್ ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ರೆಡಿ ಅಂತಾರೆ. ಅವನು ಒಳಗಾಗ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮೈ ಹುಷಾರಿಲ್ಲ, ಇವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮೈ ಹುಷಾರಿಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಾರೆ. ವೈ ಶುಡ್ ದಿಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್? Because unfortunately or fortunately, you see, lawyers cannot be blamed. They are engaged to put forth the case of the client in the best possible manner and, if possible, to obtain the best of relief. Why should a lawyer actually feels, why should I go and appear before a judge and chambu? So ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ, ಯಾರು 482 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ? ಬೇಡ, ನೋ ಫೈಲಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ನಿಂತೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ರಿಟ್ ಪಿಟಿಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ರಿಲೀಫ್ ಕೊಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೇಸಸ್ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. See, this is not good for the judiciary. Therefore, there is need for judges to have balance and middle path anta. They all should, as far as possible, ಈ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದು ಈ ತರ ಲಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಈಗಲೇ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಲಾಯರ್ಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಅಡ್ವೈಸ್ ದೇರ್ ಕ್ಲೈಂಟ್ಸ್. ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಲಾಯರ್ ಹತ್ರ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ, ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ನನ್ನ ಕೇಸ್ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ಹೌದು ನಿಂದು ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಈ ತರ ಇದೆಪ್ಪ, ಲಾ ಈ ತರ ಇದೆ, ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ನೀನ್ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ಗೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಈ ತರ ಆಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಲಾಯರ್. ಇವ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಹಿಂಗಾಗ್ತದೆ, ಇವ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಹಿಂಗಾಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಲಾಯರು? ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ದಿ ಅನ್ಫಾರ್ಚುನೇಟ್ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್. This situation should be avoided. We should go back to the situation where a lawyer, on knowing the facts, on knowing the law, can advise reasonably. ಇಂಥ ಕೇಸಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ನಿನಗೆ ಆಗತ್ತಪ್ಪ, ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಇಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ ಯಾರ ಮುಂದೆ ಬರುತ್ತೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಗೋಗುತ್ತೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಹಾಕು ನೋಡೋಣ ನಿಂದು ಅದೃಷ್ಟ ಅನ್ನೋದು, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಎ ಗ್ಯಾಂಬಲ್, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್. Now, therefore, I say that the idiosyncrasies is something which is very, very dangerous. In fact, ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಲ್ಲ, ನನಗೆ ಐ ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಶೋಕ್ ಬಾನ್ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಸತಿ MVC ಕೇಸಸ್ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋರು, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಸತಿ ಬರೂಕಾ ಅವ್ರು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋರು. ದೇವರ್ 2 senior judges. ಬರೂಕಾ ಅವ್ರು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ MVC ಅಪೀಲ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೊರಟೋಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಅಶೋಕ್ ಬಾನ್ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಕಾಂಪನ್ಸೇಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದು. ಇದು ನನಗೆಂಗ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾನು ಲೋಕ್ ಅದಾಲತ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂತಿದ್ರೆ ಅಶೋಕ್ ಬಾನ್ ಅವರು MFAs ಹ್ಯಾಂಡಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ ಲೋಕ್ ಅದಾಲತ್ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೈಕೋರ್ಟ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ಬರ್ತಾನೆ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಬರೂಕಾ ಅವರು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಕೇಸಸ್ ದವಾ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ಇರೋದೆಲ್ಲ ಹಾಕಿ ಬೇಗ ಮುಗಿಸಿ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅಂತ ನಮ್ ಮುಂದೆ ಬನ್ನಿ ಲೋಕ್ ಅದಾಲತ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋರು. ಇದರಿಂದ ನಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಹೌ ದಿ idiosyncrasies ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಇದು. ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ ಕೇಸಸ್, ಲೇಬರ್ ಕೇಸಸ್. ಕೆಲವ್ರು ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಆಯ್ತು 100% ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ವೇಜಸ್, ಕೆಲವ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ 50%, ಕೆಲವ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ನಿನ್ ಕೆಲಸನೇ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ, ನೋ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ವೇಜಸ್. ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ? ವಾಟ್ ಡಸ್ ದಿ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯಿ ಫೀಲ್? ಐ ಆಮ್ ನಾಟ್ ಸೇಯಿಂಗ್ ದಿ ಜಡ್ಜಸ್ 100% ಕೊಟ್ಟವ್ರು ತಪ್ಪಂತ ಹೇಳೋದಿಲ್ಲ, 50% ಕೊಟ್ಟವ್ರು ತಪ್ಪಂತ ಹೇಳೋದಿಲ್ಲ, 0% ಕೊಟ್ಟವ್ರು ತಪ್ಪಂತ ಹೇಳೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ದೇ ಶುಡ್ ಆಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸರ್ಟನ್ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ಸ್. ಡಿಸೈಡೆಡ್ ಕೇಸಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಆ ಕೇಸಸ್ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಒಂದೇ ತರ ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ then there will be no complaints, there will be no grievances. This is something that is anomaly which can be corrected, which is in the hands of the judges. But it is not possible to totally eradicate this. Different judges will always have different views and perceptions of different degrees. anomalies arise from personal convictions and philosophies of judges will always be an inherent defect in this, because that is based on the human trait and human philosophy. But it is next to impossible to achieve a state of absolute impartiality. ಒಬ್ರು ಜಡ್ಜ್, ಅಮೆರಿಕನ್ ಜಡ್ಜು ಬಹಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. If, however, absence of bias and partiality be defined to mean total absence of preconceptions in the mind of the judge, then no one will ever have a fair trial and no one will. The human mind, even in infancy, is not blank piece of paper. Therefore, we have to learn, and as lawyers, you should, it is your duty to explain to the litigant, ಆಗುತ್ತಪ್ಪ ಜಡ್ಜಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಪೆಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಆನ್ ದಿ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಕೇಸ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಈ ಕಡೆ ಆ ಕಡೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ಇಸಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಲಿಟಿಗೆಂಟ್ ಥಿಂಕ್ಸ್ ಸಮ್ ಜಡ್ಜಸ್ ಆರ್ ಕರಪ್ಟ್, ಅದರಿಂದ ಈ ತರ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. See, this is a very dangerous situation, very delicate situation. Therefore, it is your duty to explain every, as you may think one way, your friend may think other way. Similarly, judges also, they are also human beings. Solpa changes irutte. This is an anomaly, but this anomaly will continue anta you should realize and you should tell the litigants. This is one thing I will appeal to you. Now, innondu let me go quickly to a second anomaly. This is arising out of wrong interpretation of law. I will give a anomalies also occur due to erroneous interpretation of laws by judges, either due to lack of knowledge or capacity to understand, or due to predisposition, as I said, because of a personal philosophy. Let me give a, in fact, whenever somebody asks for a, example of a erroneous judicial interpretation, one thing that comes to the mind is the decision of the Supreme Court known as the JMM case. I do not know, the old timers may know, the youngsters may not know. Let me give a few facts. 1991 election to Lok Sabha, Congress party remained 14 members short of the majority, and a government was formed by PV Narasimha Rao. He did wonderfully. That apart, Congress party remained 14 members short. The government faced a motion of no confidence on 28/7/1993 and managed to defeat the motion by mustering the support of 265 as against 251. One Ravindra Kumar of Rashtriya Mukti Morcha filed a complaint with the CBI that a criminal conspiracy was hatched, pursuant to which certain members of the parliament belonging to Jharkhand Mukti Morcha and certain others agreed to and received bribe from Narasimha Rao to give votes with a view to defeat the no confidence motion. A criminal prosecution was launched against the bribe giving and bribe taking members of the parliament under the Prevention of Corruption Act. The special judge took cognizance of the offense of bribery and criminal conspiracy. The persons sought to be charged filed petitions before the High Court for quashing the criminal proceedings. The Delhi High Court dismissed them. Appeals were filed before the Supreme Court. It came before a constitution bench. What happened? Section 7 of the PC Act provides that if a public servant accepts or obtains or attempts to obtain from any person any gratification, whatever other than the legal remuneration, as a motive or reward for doing or forbearing, etc., shall be punishable with imprisonment. The members of parliament who were accused of taking the bribe claimed immunity. See, what they said was, they said Article 105(2) of the Constitution provided, no member of parliament shall be liable to any proceedings in any court in respect of anything said or any vote given by him in the parliament. Anta, this is the immunity they said. ನಾವು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪಾರ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ವೋಟ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ವಿ, ಆ ವೋಟಿನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇದು, ಅದರಿಂದ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಇಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿ, ಅಬ್ಸಲ್ಯೂಟ್ ಇಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿ ಅಂತ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಈ ತರ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಫಾರ್ಮುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಡಸ್ ಆರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ 105 of the constitution confer any immunity on a minister of or a member of the parliament from being prosecuted in a criminal case for an offense involving acceptance of a bribe ಅಂತ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. Then they answered it. You will be surprised, it is still the law. What is the answer? Constitution bench by a majority held, answered the question in the affirmative, holding that the bribe-taking members of the parliament who voted on the no confidence motion were entirely immune from criminal prosecution for the offense of bribery. This is what they said. I quote, "We are acutely conscious of the seriousness of the offense that the alleged bribe takers are said to have committed. If true, they bartered a most solemn trust committed to them by those they represented. By reason of the lucre that they received, they enabled a government to survive. Even so, they are entitled to the protection that the Constitution plainly affords them. Our sense of indignation should not lead us to construe the Constitution narrowly, impairing the guarantee to effectuate effective parliamentary participation." Anta heli, their proceedings were quashed against them, holding that they were immune. This is a shocking decision. This is a wrong interpretation. Is this the correct view? Answer is obviously it is not. Article 105(2) confers immunity on members on parliament when they discharge or purport to discharge their parliamentary or official duty of making a speech in the parliament or in giving a vote. It, as the act of receiving a bribe, is not in pursuance of any parliamentary or official duties. Bribe-taking members of parliament are not entitled to the immunity from criminal prosecution. Immunity under clause 2 of article 5 becomes available to members only when he makes a speech, andre defamation illa, libel illa, slander illa, or gives his vote in the parliament proceedings inside one of the chambers of the parliament or in any committee. If the acts involving conspiracy and acceptance of a bribe were wholly done by the accused outside the four walls of the legislative chamber, because ana kottiddu outside the parliament, it did not attract the immunity provision so as to protect them from criminal prosecution. Further, these criminal acts constitute crimes by themselves without reference to what was going on in the parliament. This is well known. It is clear that Article 105(2) would give immunity in respect of complaints relating to private criminal offenses involving defamation, libel, or slander, but would not confer immunity from criminal prosecution for public offenses, that is, offenses against the state like bribery. Obviously, no state can be expected to confer such immunity which would be destructive of the rule of law and adverse to the interest of the nation. Thus, the view of the court in interpreting Article 105(2) in a manner enabling members of parliament to claim immunity from prosecution for an obvious offense of bribery would not only be repugnant to the healthy development of democracy, but would also subversive of the Constitution itself. ಜನರಿಗೆ ಇವಾಗಲೂ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದೇನ್ರಿ ಅದು? ಬ್ರೈಬ್ ತಗೊಂಡವರು ತಪ್ಪು ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಎಂತಾದ್ರಿ ಇದು ಕೋರ್ಟ್, ಎಂತಾದ್ರಿ ಇದು ಲಾ, ಎಂತಾದ್ರಿ ಇದು ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್? ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ದಿ ಅನಾಮಲಿ. See, when you wrongly interpret law, it leads to an anomalous situation. Such anomalies should not occur. This is absolutely necessary. Andre, judges should be very careful. And if judges are not careful, and intadagogutte. Idralli, this is not anything to do with moral turpitude. The judges' honesty ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿನೂ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. These are wrong judgments, wrong interpretation. ಈ ರಾಂಗ್ ಇಂಟರ್ಪ್ರಿಟೇಷನ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಬಿಡಬಾರ್ದು. ಇವಾಗ ಈ ಕೇಸು ನಾನು JMM ಕೇಸ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಯಾವಾಗ? 30 years ಇಂದ ಲಾ ಹಂಗೆ ಇದೆ. It should not happen. See, the legal scholars, members of the bar, judges, should be vigilant. ಈ ತರ ರಾಂಗ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬಂದಾಗ they should make an effort, bring it to the attention of the court in appropriate case, and ensure that the earliest point of time the correction is made. If the correction is not made, we will be bound by injustice, by wrong orders. Therefore, this is an anomaly that requires to be corrected. Similar, one more short one about, again, about judgments, judges per incurium. Trivikram, just tell me, Rangnath, how, at what time I should stop anta helbidi, so that I will cut ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ.
Continue till 7 o'clock.
6 o'clock ಅಂದ್ರೆ okay, 7 o'clock, okay.
7 o'clock.
Okay. Next to per incurium judgments. Nodi, if when without overlooking a legal provision, overlooking a binding decision, judgment ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ. Now, if it is given by the Supreme Court, it is still binding law until another coordinate bench of the Supreme Court or a larger bench of the Supreme Court says, no, this is per incurium anta ಹೇಳೋವರೆಗೂ this wrong judgment will continue to be binding judgment. Is it not anomalous? There are cases where for 10 years, 15 years, the Supreme Court never got a chance to look at the per incurium judgment. And because they did not have the opportunity, they did not declare it as per incurium. Because it is not declared as per incurium, even though it is a wrong judgment, it is still binding. Now, this is an anomalous situation. Something should be done. Here again, the only remedy is when there is a per incurium judgment, somehow in some case it should be, the members of the bar should bring it to the notice of the court, and once it is brought, even the Chief Justice should constitute a special bench. ಈ ತರ ರಾಂಗ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅದನ್ನ ರಿವ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಈ ತರ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಮಾಡದೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೇಸಸ್ ರಾಂಗ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸು, ಪರ್ ಇನ್ಕ್ಯೂರಿಯಂ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸು, ಅಬ್ಸರ್ಡ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸು ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಾಗೇ ಇರಲಿ ಅಂತ ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಹೊರಟೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಕ್ರೆಡಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಹೊರಟೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಲಾಯರ್ಸ್ಗೂ ಒಂದು ಕ್ಲೈಂಟಿಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಒಂದು ಒಪಿನಿಯನ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು, ಒಂದು ಅಡ್ವೈಸ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದು ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. Therefore, these anomalies can be corrected and they should be corrected. Now, there is a lot of things to be said. Because as I said, for want of time, I will just skip them. The only I have given 3 examples about the judiciary. I am giving lesser example about the legislature. I am giving more examples about judiciary because I am from the judiciary. ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಜುಡಿಷಿಯರಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಲೆಜಿಸ್ಲೇಚರ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಹೇಳೋದು ಬೇಡ, ಅದು ಲೆಜಿಸ್ಲೇಚರ್ ಯಾರನ್ನ ಹೇಳಿ. ಬಟ್ ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಔಟ್ one anomaly which is so absurd and nobody will believe that such a thing can happen and continues to happen. Let me give a short this thing. See, 1860 ವರ್ಷ ಅಂದ್ರೆ 160 ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಮೊದಲು ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಪೀನಲ್ ಕೋಡ್ ವಾಸ್ ಮೇಡ್. ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಪೀನಲ್ ಕೋಡ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ that punishment can be death, punishment can be imprisonment for life, punishment can be simple or rigorous imprisonment for a particular period, or penalty or fine, or both, etc., etc. Levy of fine is either a punishment by itself or a punishment in addition to or an alternative to imprisonment. Levy of fine, apart from being a punishment for the offense committed, is also intended to be a deterrent against commission of further offenses. When the penal code came into force in the year 1860, the amount specified by way of fine as an alternative to imprisonment was really intended to be a severe deterrent against similar future offenses, which in effect was equivalent to the punishment of imprisonment. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವರು ಆ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ 1860 ಅವರು ಯಾವ ತರ ಫೈನ್ ಅವರು ದೇ ಥಾಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಆ ಫೈನ್ ಕಟ್ಟೋಕ್ ಬದಲು ಜೈಲ್ಗೆ ಹೊರಟೋಗ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು, ಆ ತರ ಫೈನ್ ಇತ್ತು. ಯಾಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಗಿವ್ ದಿ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಆಫ್ 275 and section 274 and 275. These sections of penal code provide for a punishment of imprisonment for a term which may extend to 6 months, or a fine extending up to 1,000 rupees or both to any person who adulterates drugs or sells adulterated drugs. One example. Innondu example ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ. A person who causes grievous hurt by any rash and negligent act is punishable with the imprisonment of either 2 years or with fine which may extend to 1,000 rupees or both ಅಂತ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಯಾವಾಗ 1860 1860 therefore 1 ವರ್ಷ ಜೈಲಿಗೆ ಕಳಿಸೋದು, 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಫೈನ್ ಹಾಕೋದು ಒಂದು ಅಂತ ಇತ್ತು. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ 1,000 ಆವಾಗ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಪ್ರಕಾರ 99% 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಫೈನ್ ಕಟ್ಟೋಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದೆಮ್ ವೇರ್ ಎಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ಜೈಲ್. ಏನಾಯ್ತು? Where the fine specified is an alternative to imprisonment, the object is that fine should be a punishment, the effect of which is comparable to the effect of imprisonment itself for the specified period and commensurate with the gravity of the offense, so that levy of fine acts as much as a deterrent as imprisonment itself, so that future wrongdoers will not commit the offense. In many cases where fine is specified as an alternative to imprisonment, courts now tend to impose the punishment of fine instead of imprisonment. Ivaga, let us say the same example, adulteration of that drug ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ 1860 ಅವನು if he is guilty 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಫೈನ್. 2020 after 160 years ಅದೇ ಅಡಲ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಇವಾಗಲೂ ಪ್ರಾವಿಷನ್ ಆಫ್ 274 275 ಸೇಸ್ ಸೇಮ್ 1,000 ರೂಪೀಸ್ ಹಾಕ್ಬಹುದು. ಅದೇ ತರ ನಾನು ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಗ್ರೀವಿಯಸ್ ಹರ್ಟ್, ಆವಾಗಲೂ 1860 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ, ಇವಾಗಲೂ 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ. No, what is the effect of this? Nobody has considered it. You see, from the year 1960, the value of money has been steadily decreasing on account of inflation. After more than 1.5 centuries, present value of 1,000 rupees bears no comparison with the value of 1,000 rupees in the year 1860. Difference is huge. Let me give the example. A bag of rice was costing 1 rupee or less in 1860. The same bag costs 3,000 rupees to 4,000 rupees now. A gram of gold was costing about 2 to 3 rupees in the year 1860. It costs now 5,000 rupees today. ಅಂದ್ರೆ 1,000ರಷ್ಟು ಬೆಲೆ ಆಗಿರೋದು 100ರಷ್ಟಲ್ಲ, 1,000 2,000ರಷ್ಟು ಮನಿ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಹೋಗಿದೆ. ಬಟ್ 2,000ರಷ್ಟು ಆದ್ರೇನು ನಾವು ಅದೇ 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿನ ಭದ್ರವಾಗಿ ಫೈನ್ ಆಗಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೀವಿ, 1 ರೂಪಾಯಿನೂ ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಇನ್ನು ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್, a rupee then in 1860, even by a very modest estimate and comparison, is 1,000 times more valuable than now. Therefore, if an offender was punished with a fine of 1,000 in the year 1860, he should now be fined 1,000 times that amount. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆವಾಗ 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಅವರು ಪ್ರಿಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಈಸ್ ಇವಾಗ ಮಿನಿಮಮ್ 10 ಲಕ್ಷ ರೂಪಾಯಿಗಳನ್ನ ಫೈನ್ ಆಗಿ ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಕು. ಇವಾಗ 10 ಲಕ್ಷ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಫೈನ್ ಆಗಿ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಇದೆ, ಅವನು ಜೈಲ್ಗೆ ಹೋಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, 10 ಲಕ್ಷ ಫೈನ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ. ಇವಾಗ 6 months ಇಂಪ್ರಿಸನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆರ್ 1,000 rupees ಅಂದ್ರೆ 1,000 rupees. ಇವಾಗ ಒಂದು ಬ್ರೇಕ್ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ 5 star ಹೋಟ್ಲಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನು ಅಕ್ಯೂಸ್ಡ್ ಹೋಗಿ ಒಂದು ಟಿಫನ್ ತಿಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. 1,000 rupees he happily throws on the face of the clerk and walks away. Is this what should happen? After 160 rupees there is no change in the fine? This is absurd. When the provision for fine was made in 1860, fine amount was so high as to be effective alternative punishment, and many offenders could not afford to pay the same and consequently underwent imprisonment. In several cases, amount of fine was sufficient to provide a reasonable recompense to the victim or victim's family. Thus, when the penal code was brought into force 1.5 centuries ago, fine that was levied was intended to be an adequate punishment for the crime and adequate deterrent against crime. But as the value of money decreased over the years, deterrent effect of the fine amount fixed in 1860 has gone. Ultimately, it is nothing. I consider it absurd for a person who is found guilty of causing grievous hurt by his rash and negligence, or person found guilty of adulterating a drug and who would have been fined 1,860,000 rupees in 1860 would still be fined 1,000 rupees and not 10 lakhs of rupees. How will people be deterred from committing offenses? He will continue to adulterate the drugs. People would commit to offenses because this kind of fine is provided. This is, unless the state immediately takes steps, to increase with reference to the inflation, the fine amount, it encourages crime as fine has ceased to be a deterrent, makes mockery of the law, compels courts to impose punishment of imprisonment. ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇವಾಗ ನೋಡ್ತಾರೆ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಮುಂದೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಅಡಲ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾನೆ, 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಅಂತಾನೆ, ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಏನ್ರಿ ಇದು ಅನ್ಯಾಯ, 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇವನು ಹೋಗಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಜೈಲಿಗೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. See, they are compelled sometimes, instead of fine ಹಾಕೋಕ್ ಬದಲು ಜೈಲಿಗೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದ್ರಿಂದ many people who could have paid the fine and walk away are going to jail. This is also a absurd situation. ಎಷ್ಟು 100 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಬರೋ, ಇವಾಗ 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಬರೋ ಕಡೆ 1,00,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ 5 ಲಕ್ಷ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಫೈನ್ ಹಾಕ್ಲಿ, ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಬರ್ತದೆ? that can be used for various other purposes. All these are just not noticed. A revamp of the sentencing protocol under the penal code can effectively improve the criminal law administration, bring down crime, and render justice to victims of crime. Victims ge yaru nobody bothers. If inta fine hakadre, entire families of victims can be saved. Why are we waiting? Why continue with the absurdly low fines unrelated to the gravity of the crime, which neither has a punishment element nor a deterrent effect? In fact, idu onde alla, there are no absurd provisions ide. If you take section 427, you will find ಎಷ್ಟು absurd andre, anybody who commits mischief and causes damage to a sum of 50 rupees, the imprisonment is 2 years. 50 rupees ge mischief ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ 2 years imprisonment. ಅಡಲ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ 1,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಫೈನ್. ಇದೂ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು, ಅದೂ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು. Nothing is being changed. It is unfortunate situation. Things should be improved. Solution is a protocol mandating review of laws periodically so that law can be changed. ಅದು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಮಾಡೋವರೆಗೂ anomalies will continue. I will not be able to touch the other things. I will close by saying,
sir. Sir, if I can interrupt, we have been getting many calls. So may I request you to continue for a few more minutes, sir, so we can skip the Q&A session. We have been getting so many calls that all our participants, they want to hear you for a longer time. So can I request you to continue?
Okay, one more example I will give you. All right. So for this, the solution is to have a protocol of mandating review of the sentencing provisions and quantum of fines periodically to assess the effect of inflation on statutory provisions. Another solution is for the Law Commission to examine the enactments creating offenses and providing for punishment by way of punishment of payment of fine, and ensure that they are periodically reviewed. This is about the law, anomalies in law. You see, there are other anomalies. As I said, I will not touch them for want of time. I will straight away go to a more complex issue, that is anomalies arising out of the inherent difference between justice according to law and justice according to morality. This is a very touchy subject. Again, I will try to be as quick as possible. Law comprises of statutes, that is codification of rules, and legal precedents. On the other hand, morality refers to the prevalent moral values and ethical behavior of the society, that is fairness, truth, compassion, equity, equality. In an ideal state, there will be rule of morality. But what a practical democracy seeks to achieve is rule of law and good governance, and not rule of morality. This we should remember, because many people they tend to think, as I said in the beginning, morality and law is onde anta tilkoltare. They are completely different. Let me give the explain it a little further. Initial stages alli, andre undan kaladalli, when law was being developed, in the initial stages of development of law, principles of morality recognized by the society were the legal rules. Decisions by courts, decision by rulers were based on the prevalent principles of morality. ಏನು ನ್ಯಾಯ, ಯಾವುದು ಧರ್ಮ, ಯಾವುದು ತಪ್ಪು, ಆ ಥರ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಲಾ ಅಂತ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಧರ್ಮ ದಿ moral values ಇತ್ತು. When principles of morality and ethical behavior were being codified into laws, the lawmakers found that there was a need to incorporate rules that were necessary for good governance, that is, rules required to maintain economic prosperity and security, uniformity and consistency. Adrinda, they added something more than morality in the rules of law, that is, in the law. It was found necessary to make laws to tone down the excesses, shortcomings and absurdities of traditions, social customs and conventions, rigid religious tenets, by breathing some sense and logic into them. Thus, there was a steady shift of emphasis from justice according to morals to justice according to law. Andre yenaitu, law no doubt broadly based on moral values and ethical behavior, but the notions and perceptions as to what constitutes ethical behavior and morality underwent change from generation to generation, and even more frequently. Principles of morality are based on social customs and conventions. Law, though not wholly delinked from accepted principles of morality, is also based on the need and necessities of the society and political philosophies of the party in power and the practical conveyance of the government in power. Public good, economic stability, national and internal security all become relevant for making a law. What rule of law contemplates is utilitarian justice, or justice in accordance with law, and not justice in accordance with morals and ethical values. What is just need not always be lawful, and what is unlawful need not always be unjust. The dichotomy between law and morals lead to several anomalies. Take the simplest example, because of trial court lawyers. I do not know, in my days, on-demand promissory note case andre, that was the basic bread and butter. Pro-note cases, so rent control cases. See, moral lalli what is the moral? If you borrow something from somebody, the morality requires it should be repaid. That is a moral. Justice according to morality, you have borrowed, you are admitting that you are borrowing, therefore you have to pay it back. But what is in accordance with law? Accordance with law nalli nodi, avanu ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ, yes, I have borrowed, but limitation agogide, 3 ವರ್ಷ agogide, so it cannot be repaid. ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಪ್ ಹಾಕಿಲ್ಲ, ಇವಾಗ ಇದೆಯೋ ಇನ್ನು ಆನ್ ಡಿಮ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಮಿಸರಿ ನೋಟಿಸ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಪ್ ಇದೆಯೋ ಇಲ್ಲೋ ನಂಗೆ ಮರ್ತೋಗಿದೆ, ಅವಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಪ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹೋಯ್ತು, ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಹೋಯ್ತು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಟ್ಟವನು ಮನಿ ಲೆಂಡರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದು, ಮನಿ ಲೆಂಡರ್ ಲೈಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಹೋಯ್ತು. ಇಲ್ಲ, ಬಾರೋಯರ್ ಇನ್ಸಾಲ್ವೆಂಟ್ ಆದ, ಹೋಯ್ತು. ಸೊ ದೋ ದಿ ಬಾರೋಯಿಂಗ್ is admitted, morally he is liable to repay the amount. In law, he need not repay the amount on these various grounds. So law is different, the morality is different. This is one aspect of it. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, ಬಟ್ ದಿ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇವಾಗ ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಇವಾಗ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ 2-3 years ಇದು ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಪೀಪಲ್ ಥಿಂಕ್, society thinks that they should be governed by morality. They expect law to conform to morality. As they expect law and morality to be the same, they tend to equate justice according to law with justice according to morality. They expect justice according to morality, not recognizing that the two are conceptually different. As a consequence, they perceive anomalies where law does not see eye to eye with morality. Nodi, if you go to Haryana, honor killing according to them is their moral value, their our paddhati adu. They do not consider it as a crime that yaro ಒಂದು ಹುಡುಗಿ ಓಡೋಯ್ತು, or married out of caste, they will kill. And according to them, it is the most honorable thing to do. That is morality according to them. But law does not permit it. Nobody realizes it. An eye for eye and a limb for limb, or life for life, may be morality. An honor killing or a revenge killing may be justified under local prevalent customs and moral values, but they are unacceptable. If someone ruthlessly, savagely, and openly kills a family of a dozen persons, the residents of the area who resort to his lynching may justify it as moral justice. In fact, this is a serious situation. If a mafia don is involved in various murders, rapes, extortion, ella ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ hundreds of cases ಇದೆ. But ಏನಿದೆ? Because he is a mafia don, people are afraid of him. Therefore, people are afraid, nobody comes for evidence. So case after case he is being acquitted. So police become desperate. ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅವರು? You know what is happening. ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಹೈದರಾಬಾದ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆಯ್ತು, ಇವಾಗ ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಉತ್ತರ ಪ್ರದೇಶ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆಯ್ತು. Encounter happens. When encounter happens, people who consider morality ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ? ಆ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ನವರಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಗಾರ್ಲೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. They are called as heroes, persons who have killed the persons. Of course, the assumption is the person killed is a mafia don. The person killed is a person who has committed lot of offenses. But unfortunately, if you consider this, when the Hyderabad killing happened, the TV media praised the police officers. The police officers ಗೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸೈಟ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು, ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಎಲ್ಲ ಜನ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಮೆರವಣಿಗೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವ್ರನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಹೀರೋಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ? ಇದು ಮಾರಲ್ ಆಂಗಲ್. ಮಾರಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ನು ತಪ್ಪು ಮಾಡ್ದ, ಅವನು ಈಸ್ ಅ ಮರ್ಡರರ್, ಅವನಿಗೆ ರತ್ಲೆಸ್ಲಿ ದಿ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಕಿಲ್ಡ್ ಹಿಮ್, therefore morally it is correct ಅಂತ. But danger of this, please remember, what is the danger? ಇವತ್ತು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ನವನು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ? ಇವನಿಗೆ ಕಂಟ್ರೋಲ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಇವನೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಮರ್ಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ, ಇವನ ಮೇಲೆ ಯಾರು ಸಾಕ್ಷಿ ಹೇಳೋಕ್ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎ ಎನ್ಕೌಂಟರ್, ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಡೂ ಎ ಗುಡ್ ಜಾಬ್, ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಡೂ ವಿಜಿಲೆಂಟ್ ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಸಾಯಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಆಲ್ ರೈಟ್, ಪೀಪಲ್ ಅಕ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್. ಇದು ಹೀಗೆ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ? ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ನೇಚರ್. 4 ಕೇಸ್ 5 ಕೇಸ್ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಈ ತರ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ನವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ? ಈ ಮೇ ನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ಎ ಮಾಫಿಯಾ ಡಾನ್, ಈ ಮೇ ಬಿ ಎ ಆರ್ಡಿನರಿ ಕ್ರಿಮಿನಲ್. ಪೊಲೀಸ್ನವ್ನಿಗೆ ಬೈದು ಬಿಟ್ಟ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಎನ್ಕೌಂಟರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾಳೆ ಅದೂ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಒಬ್ಬ ಪಾಲಿಟಿಷಿಯನ್ ಹೂ ಈಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾವಿಂಗ್ ಪವರ್, ಈ ಸೇಸ್ ನೋಡಿ ಈಸ್ ಮೈ ಎನಿಮಿ ಅಂತಾರೆ, ಅವನಿಗೂ ಮುಗಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾಳೆ ಈವನ್ ಎ ಮಾಫಿಯಾ ಫೆಲೋ may give a supari to a police to kill his opponent, mafia fellow. Where will it end? See, what is started as a morally justifiable, encounter killing will become a regular criminal act. And ee tara nadkondu hodre, apart from the legal angle, what should happen to lawyers? What should happen to justice? What should happen to court? ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ? ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ? ಕೋರ್ಟ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ, ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ಎನ್ಕೌಂಟರ್ ಕಿಲ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತ ಜಸ್ಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಲಾಯರ್ಸ್ ಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಯು ಫೈಂಡ್ ಸಂಬಡಿ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಕಮಿಟೆಡ್ ಎ ಕ್ರೈಮ್, ಯು ಕಿಲ್ ಹಿಮ್. ಟುಮಾರೋ ಯು ಸಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ ಸಂಬಡಿ, ಯು ಕಿಲ್ ಹಿಮ್. ಟುಮಾರೋ ಯು ಡೋಂಟ್ ಸಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ ಬಟ್ ಸಂಬಡಿ ವಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಹಿಮ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಕಿಲ್ಡ್ ಹಿಮ್, ಯು ಕಿಲ್ ಹಿಮ್. ದೆರ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ನೋ ಎಂಡ್. ಸೊ ಮೊರಾಲಿಟಿನ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್ ಕೊಡೋದು ಬಹಳ ಡೇಂಜರಸ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳ ವಿಸ್ಡಮ್ ಬೇಕು, ಬಹಳ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಬೇಕು. ಅದನ್ನು ಕೊಡೋ ಸರ್ಕಮ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ 130 crores ಆಫ್ ಪೀಪಲ್. ಮೊರಲ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿರೋ ಮೊರಲ್ ನಾರ್ತ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನಾರ್ತ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿರೋ ಮೊರಲ್ ನಮಗಿಲ್ಲ. ನಮಗೆ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಚಿಕ್ಕಪ್ಪನ ದೊಡ್ಡಪ್ಪನ ಮಗಳನ್ನ ಮದುವೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತಾ? ಇವಾಗ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಮೊರಲ್ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು. ನಾವು ಮಾವ ಅಕ್ಕನ ಮಗಳನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮದುವೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾನೆ. ನೀವು ನಾರ್ತ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗಿ ಅಕ್ಕನ ಮಗಳನ್ನ ಮದುವೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಚಪ್ಪಲಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊಡಿತಾರೆ. ಸಿ, ಮೊರಲ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಡಿಫರೆಂಟ್, ಲಾ ಈಸ್ ಡಿಫರೆಂಟ್. ಮೊರಲ್ಸ್ನ ಕನ್ಫ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಡಿ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಆಸ್ ಲಾಯರ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಯುವರ್ ಡ್ಯೂಟಿ ಟು ಎನ್ಶೂರ್ that people are not carried away by this morality thing too much to the at the risk of law. It is law that can bring some kind of normalcy, some kind of equality, some kind of good governance. It is the rule of law. Rule of law requires proper thing. You may be a mafia don, ಅವನಿಗೆ ಹಿಡಿಬೇಕು, ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಪ್ರಾಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟಿಗೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟಿಗೇಟ್ ಮಾಡದೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಪ್ರಾಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೋರ್ಟ್ನವ್ರು ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇನ್ನೇನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? Therefore, before, it is very easy. Third degree ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೊಡೆದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು you can take a confession also. That is also very easy. But rules, regulations should be followed. Rule of law should be maintained, and it is the lawyers who can do it. And if lawyers encourage mafia killings or encounter killing, please remember there will be no bar after some years. It will ellaru avravare ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾರೆ. ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ensure that rules of morality and rules of law are different. I think I have even now exceeded the time. The last thing I would like to say is this: anomalies in law and justice exist and will continue to exist. They are like bugs in a computer program. The lawyers and judges should hunt them and destroy the anomalies, or at least minimize their impact. Otherwise, the common man will lose his confidence in judiciary, lose his confidence in the bar, resulting in erosion of rule of law and erosion of democracy itself. Therefore, let us endeavor to reduce the anomalies in law and increase justice. Thank you, friends, for giving me an opportunity to share a few thoughts. And I have written a article referring to these and several other anomalies. I have only referred to 1/3 of the anomalies. It is published, I think, in SCC online. It will shortly come. If you have interest, you can read it. Thank you for this opportunity. And I am ready to take any questions if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, sir, for an extremely valuable presentation. Can we now move on to the Q&A session? We will be taking up very few questions, very limited questions in fact. So can we have the first question, please? You may raise your hand. Yeah, we have Mr. Satyanarayan Gupta. Sir, I have unmuted you. Please go ahead with your question. You will have to unmute, sir. I have unmuted you from my end.
Unmute.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead with your question.
Why it became like this?
You are unmuted, sir. You can go ahead with your question.
Sir, I am Satyanarayan Gupta, advocate. Hello?
Yeah,
You are audible.
You are audible.
Yes, sir. Sir, just now we have referred about the IPC and all about the fine. Says why the top court is not taking into cognizance and take it as a public interest litigation to direct the government to amend the law.
ನೋಡಿ, ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಲಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಮಾಡಿ ವಿತ್ ಆಲ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಫಿಗರ್ಸ್. ಇಫ್ ಯು ಫೈಲ್ ಎ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಲಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್, maybe it will be entertained, maybe it may not be entertained. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, ಲಾ ಕಮಿಷನ್ ಅವರು ನಾನು ಹೇಳದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ 3 ಸತಿ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ. ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ನವರು ಏನೂ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಸಿ, ಇಂಥದ್ದು ಸೇಮ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ಫ್ರಾನ್ಸ್. ಫ್ರಾನ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಫೈನ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಬಂತು. ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದಂದ್ರೆ, ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಸೇ ಒನ್ ಅಫೆನ್ಸ್ ರಿಲೇಟಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಮೋಟಾರ್ ಆಕ್ಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ ಒಂದು ಅಫೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಫೈನ್ ಇತ್ತು. ಎಷ್ಟು ಫೈನು? ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಸೇ $1,000 or 1,000 euros ಅಂತ ಇತ್ತು. They found if a driver, ordinary driver, commits an offense, the fine is 1,000 euros. But a rich man, let us say industrialist, having millions of as income, he commits the same offense, he also pays 1,000. They said, no, this is not justice. What they then did was, they said, the fine will be not fixed sum of rupees 1,000 euros. Fine will be referable to the income of the person. They said, for this offense, 1 month's income of the accused will be the fine. For this offense, 1 year's income will be the fine. Anta. Andre, if a daily wage worker ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ 1 ತಿಂಗಳು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವನಿಗೆ 100 euros will be the fine. But if a person like Ambani or somebody commits the same offense, it will be 1 million euros will be the fine. That is what France has done. How you see interest ತಗೊಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ legislators, members of the parliament take interest and ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪಾರ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟೇರಿಯನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು, ಇದು ಏನಿದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇಂಥದ್ದು ಅಬ್ಸರ್ಡ್ ಆಗಿರೋದೆಲ್ಲ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ನೀವು ಅಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ PIL ಹಾಕೋದು ನನಗೇನು ಅಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಆ PIL ಯಾರನ್ನ ರಿಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಬೈಬೇಡಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ.
Thank you, sir. Can we have the next question? You may kindly raise your hand. Can we have the next question? All right, Mr. Rangarajan, yes, I have unmuted you, sir. Sir, I have unmuted you.
Yeah,
may quickly.
Sir, ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ರಂಗರಾಜ್, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್. ತಾವು ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಹೇಳಿ.
ಸರ್, ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷ ಆಯ್ತು. ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ಅಂತರಾಳದಿಂದ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. It was a very enlightening discussion. And what should be the future, at least for the present advocates, so that the country will remain peaceful. ತಾವು ಈ ಅನಾಮಲೀಸ್ ಡ್ಯೂ ಟು ಇಂಟರ್ಪ್ರಿಟೇಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಐ ರಿಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಸೆಕ್ಷನ್ 73 and 74 of the Contract Act. 73 deals with general damages. Plaintiff will have to plead and prove. 74, it is a liquidated damages, predetermined. Court ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ? Reasonable compensation not exceeding the limit prescribed by the parties ಅಂತ wordings of the section. But 74 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು expression ಇದೆ that the person need not prove. That is the difference between 73 and 74. Only 1 minute. The expression whether or not actual damage or loss is proved to have been caused thereby. Andre, you don't have to prove. But idanna interpretation ಮಾಡಿ, the difference between 73 and 74 almost deface ಮಾಡಿ. Now, how will a party, I mean educated people, how will they, or as a lawyer, how will I say, we can stipulate this amount as damages, you will definitely get it, at least that will be the upper limit. So by interpretation,
ONGC case alli
ONGC
is under 74, you need
Yes.
not prove loss anta ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು.
correct.
ಕೈಲಾಸನಾಥ್ ಕೇಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ even under 74 ಪ್ರೂಫ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ರು. ಇದು this anomaly has to be sorted out by a larger bench after considering ಕೈಲಾಶನಾಥ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಬೇರೆ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ 2018 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಇನ್ನೂ ಅದು ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಒಂದು ಮಾತ್ರ ಲೈಟರ್ ವೈನ್ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿಸ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ರವರ್ಸಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಹಳ ಆರ್ಬಿಟ್ರೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನಾವು ಬಹಳ ಸಂತೋಷವಾಗಿ ಆರ್ಬಿಟ್ರೇಷನ್ಗಳು ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿರುತ್ತೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಹೇಳಿ ರಂಗರಾಜನ್ ಅವರೇ? ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಮಸಾಲ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಅನಾಮಲೀಸ್ ಇರಬಾರ್ದು. ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಅನಾಮಲೀಸ್ ಇದ್ರೇನೆ ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳ ಹತ್ರ ಜನ ಬರೋದು. ಇದೇನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಹಿಂಗಾಗಿದೆ, ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಕೇಸ್ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಅಚ್ಚುನಿಟ್ಟಾಗಿ ಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗಿ ಮಾಡಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ? ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮಸಾಲ ಇರ್ಲಿ. A little different. You see, what you said is not an anomaly. It requires different enunciation. I will tell you, it is possible to harmoniously, interpret both Sapaiv's case and the Kailasnath's case. ಬಟ್ ಏನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕನ್ಫ್ಯೂಷನ್, ಆ ವರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕನ್ಫ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಇದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಅದು ಯಾರನ್ನ ಒಬ್ರು ಜಡ್ಜು ಇವಾಗ ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಅನದರ್ ಬೆಂಚ್ ಅವರು ನಾರಿಮನ್ ಮಾಡಿರೋದು, ನಾರಿಮನ್ನೇ ಅದನ್ನ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ he is the best of the contract judges. ಅವರೇ one of these days he will do it. Thank you, Mr. Ravi.
Thank you, sir. Can we have one last question, please? Can we have one last question? We have Mr. Vijay Kumar Patil. Yes, sir. I have unmuted you.
Sir, namaskara, sir.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
Sir, wrongful interpretation of law by the Honorable Supreme Court in JMM case leads to anomaly. Sir, why can't the Supreme Court on suo motu correct its mistake by the constituting larger bench, or whether there is any mechanism in the Supreme Court itself under Article 142 or whatever the procedural of the Supreme Court to correct such anomalies in the law, like a law commission, sir?
In fact, Mr. Vijay Kumar, ನನ್ನ ಆರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ, you see, now it is recently published in SCC online. I have given this as a suggestion. What I have said is, each High Court and each Supreme Court should have a committee of judges to examine this whenever a lawyer or the media or the law professor, law faculty or the public bring out absurdities and wrong judgments. ಅದನ್ನ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಗಮನಕ್ಕೆ ತಂದ್ರೆ ದಿ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಶುಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮಿನ್ ದಿ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಇಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅಬ್ಸರ್ಡ್, ಇಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅನ್ಜಸ್ಟ್, it should immediately bring it to the notice of the Honorable Chief Justice, who can constitute and suo motu examine the matter. ಈ ತರ ಒಂದು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಇದನ್ನ ಮಾಡದೇ ಇರೋದು ಬಹಳ ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಾನು ಸಜೆಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಬಟ್ ಗೊತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಲಾ ಕಮಿಷನ್ ಅವ್ರು ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಸಜೆಷನ್ಸೇ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲೋ ಬಿದ್ದಿದೆ. ನಾವು ರಿಟೈರ್ ಮಂದಿ ಯಾವುದೋ ಆರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೆದ್ರೆ ಹೂ ವಿಲ್ ಬಾದರ್. ಬಟ್ ಇಫ್ ದಿ ಬಾರ್ ಟೇಕ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಅಪ್, ಯು ಸಿ, ಬಾರ್, ಯು ನೋ, ದಿ ಅನ್ಫಾರ್ಚುನೇಟ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಈಸ್ ಬಾರ್ ಈಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಹನುಮಂತ. ಅವರ ಪವರ್ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಫ್ ಯು ನೋ, ಇಫ್ ದೇ ಟೇಕ್ ಅಪ್ ಎ ಮ್ಯಾಟರ್ and if you research the matter and if you bring it to the court, even, you see, instead of one busybody filing a PIL, some respectable, you know, respected members of the bar on the PIL ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಅವ್ರ ಮಾತಿಗೆ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಇದೆ, ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಬಟ್ ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಲಾಯರ್ಸ್ಗೂ ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಟೈಮು? ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಓದಿ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೇನು ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ನಮಗೇನ ಕೇಸ್ ಬಂದಾಗ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಫೀಲಿಂಗ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ಇವಾಗ ತ್ರಿವಿಕ್ರಮ್ನವರು ಇವಾಗ ಇಂಥದೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದನ್ನೇ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡಿ ಈ ತರ ಒಂದು ಬಾರಲ್ಲಿನೂ ಒಂದು ಸೆಲ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಏನ ಕಂಪ್ಲೇಂಟ್ಸ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೋ ಲಾ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೋ ನಿಮಗೆ ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ಇದು ಸಜೆಷನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಕೊಡಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸೆಲ್ ಕೊಡಿ. ಲಾ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಬರಿತೀವಿ, ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಕೋರ್ಟ್ಗೆ ಬರಿತೀವಿ. ಏನೋ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಗಲಾಟೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಆಪರ್ಚುನಿಟಿ ಕೊಡಿ. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ವಿಜಯ್ ಕುಮಾರ್, ದಿ ಯಂಗ್ ಲಾಯರ್ಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ನೌ ಟೇಕ್ ಇಟ್ ಅಪ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಡೂ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಇಟ್.
Thank you, sir. We have Honorable Mrs. Justice Pratibha Singh who has a question. Yes, ma'am. Please go.
Namaskara, Justice Ravindran.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
It was a pleasure to listen to you as always. ನಾನು ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೀನಿ, Justice Ravindran is like the Bhishma Pitama of Karnataka.
Oh.
You know, it is really amazing how many path-breaking judgments sir has given. And in fact, sitting in the Delhi High Court, I feel so proud of the fact that Justice Ravindran has changed so many situations which were so bad in Delhi. For example, the Suraj Labs judgment. It completely changed the manner in which properties were registered in Delhi. And it brought in a completely big reform in our country. I only want to ask one question to Justice Ravindran. What would be the biggest principle which, according to you, lawyers should remember while dealing with their clients?
You see,
young lawyers.
This is well known. I did not tell them. See, service, number one, they should be truthful to the client. They should be loyal to the client. But that loyalty is not loyalty to client alone. They also owe a duty to the court because they are officers of the court. They also owe a duty to the society because they belong to a noble profession. And most importantly, they owe a duty to their own conscience. ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಮಾಡೋವಾಗಲು ಸಿ ಇಫ್ ದೇ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ಸೇ ವೆದರ್ ನಾನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಸರಿನಾ, merely because I am a wakalat holder, I need not do all the mistakes which my client has done. I am only to put forth the case of the client in the best possible manner, so that in accordance with law he will get relief. I will never exceed. I will not, for example, I will fight for him, but I will not create a document for him. I will not get a false witness for him. I will not suppress a document from court. These are simple rules. ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಆ ಲಾಯರ್ ಎದ್ ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ judge will accept the statement, whatever he says. ಓ ಇವರು ಲಾಯರ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಐ ನೀಡ್ ನಾಟ್ ಸಿ ದಿ ಫೈಲ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದು ಆ ತರ ರೆಪ್ಯುಟೇಷನ್ ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳು ಬೆಳೆಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು. ದೇ ಶುಡ್ ಬಿ not only towards, their duty is not only towards the litigant, but towards the other members of the bar. Be courteous to the other members of the bar, to the court, to be truthful and help them, to the society, to make the society a better place, and to be unto themselves, to make themselves better human beings. That's what lawyers should do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. One last question by Mr. B.M. Baliga, who has raised his hand. Sir, I have unmuted you. You will have to unmute yourself. You may pose your question.
Sir, good evening, sir. Your speech is excellent. I just wanted to ask you one question. See, the litigation prolongs for decades. A criminal justice recently from Delhi took 35 years. A suit from a lower court to Delhi High Court or up to Supreme Court take 25 years, which we see from by reading judgments in the Supreme Court, AR reports and all that. So how do you, as a retired judge, how do you feel that a litigant's conscience is struck when there is such a delay, and how can we avoid it by reforming the law and our judicial system and the procedural laws?
ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಸ್ವಾಮಿ. ಜಡ್ಜ್ಗಳು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಜಡ್ಜ್ಗಳು ಓದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರಬೇಕು, ಫೈಲು ಇಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು. ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳು ಫೈಲ್ ಓದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರಬೇಕು, ಅಡ್ಜರ್ನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೇಳಬಾರ್ದು. ಆಲ್ ದೀಸ್ ಎವ್ರಿಬಡಿ ನೋಸ್. ಯು ಸಿ ಇನ್ ಉತ್ತರ ಪ್ರದೇಶ್, in Maharashtra, a criminal appeal takes 20 years. In Karnataka High Court, I am told a first appeal, a regular first appeal and regular second appeal takes 10 years. Muttavrilla. Every judge, let us say, wants only writ petitions, only want cases that can be disposed of immediately, does not want to touch the big files which have been lying for 10 to 15 years. How will cases get disposed of? ಅದೇ ತರ ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳೂ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಇಂಟ್ರಿಮ್ ಇಂಜಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಸಿಕ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಸಾಕು, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಕೇಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ವರಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಫೀಸ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಸಾಕು ಅಂತ. ಸಿ, ಕೇಸ್ ನಡೆಸಬೇಕು, ಅಡ್ಜರ್ನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೇಳಬಾರ್ದು, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅನ್ನೆಸೆಸರಿ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು, ಅನ್ನೆಸೆಸರಿ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು. ಎಷ್ಟು ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯೋ, ಎಷ್ಟು ಲಾ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇದೆಯೋ ಓದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದು ಅಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಅಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಜಡ್ಜು ಇಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ ಕೇಸ್ ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಆಲ್ಟರ್ನೇಟಿವ್ ಡಿಸ್ಪ್ಯೂಟ್ ರೆಸಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಎನ್ಕರೇಜ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಅಮೆರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ 90% ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಕೇಸಸ್ ಆರ್ ಸೆಟಲ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ಪ್ರೀ ಟ್ರಯಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಜ್ by alternative dispute resolution, by mediation process. Illi 10% of the cases ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. Criminal cases ನಲ್ಲಿ plea bargaining has been a failure here. 33 million cases are there in the courts. ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? It is a government is not bothered. Judges are ಕೈ ಎತ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದೇನ್ 2,000 ಕೇಸ್, ಒಬ್ಬೊಬ್ಬರಿಗೆ 1,500 ಕೇಸ್, 2,000 ಕೇಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟಾಗುತ್ತೋ ಅಷ್ಟು ಮಾಡೋಣ ಅಂತ. ಯಾವ ಸ್ಟೇಜ್ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಅಪ್ರೆಸಿವ್ ನೇಚರ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ನಂಬರ್ಸ್, judges have started thinking of cases as statistics. ಈ ಕೇಸಸ್ ಡಿಸ್ಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಇಷ್ಟು ಕೇಸ್ ಡಿಸ್ಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ನೋ, the real hallmark is not how many cases you have disposed of. The real hallmark is how much justice I have done ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಅದು ಹೊರಟೋಗಿದೆ, ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಹೊರಟೋಗಿದೆ. ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳಿಗೂ ಎಷ್ಟು ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ಕ್ಲೈಂಟ್ಗೆ ನ್ಯಾಯ ನಾನು ತಲುಪಿಸಿದ್ದೇನೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಹೊರಟೋಗಿದೆ. ಬಿಸಿ ಡಿಲೇ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ. ಏನ್ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ? ಕೇಸ್ ಇವತ್ತು ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ 1 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಸೆಟ್ಲ್ ಆಯ್ತಾ, 2 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಕ್ರಿ ಬಂತ ಅಂತ. ಈಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್? ಈಸ್ ಇಟ್ ದಿ ರಿಯಲ್ ಡಿಲೇ? See, a party is not interested in paper decree. Is he interested in a decree of a court? No. He wants relief. Therefore, if you want to know the real delay, you should calculate from the day he comes to the lawyer to the day he gets relief. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವನು 10 ಲಕ್ಷ ರೂಪಾಯಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಕೇಸ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ 10 ಲಕ್ಷ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಅವನ ಕೈಗೆ ಯಾವತ್ತು ಬರುತ್ತೋ ಅಷ್ಟರವರೆಗೂ ಕೇಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಪೆಂಡಿಂಗ್. ಇಫ್ ಎ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಲಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್ ಶುರು ಆದ್ರೆ ಆ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಅವನು ಸಕ್ಸೀಡ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಆ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಆಕ್ಚುಯಲ್ ಡೆಲಿವರಿ ಆಗೋವರೆಗೂ ಕೇಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಪೆಂಡಿಂಗ್. ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ರಿಮೋನಿಯಲ್ ಕೇಸ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ರಿಮೋನಿಯಲ್ ಡೈವೋರ್ಸ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಲ್ಲ ಸೇರ್ದು ಅದು ಆಗೋವರೆಗೂ ನಾಟ್. ಯು ಸಿ ದಿ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಈಸ್ lawyers, judges all think the litigation ends when a order is made, when a decree is made. It is not so. For a litigant, the order is only one step in series of headaches. One more court anta avanu worry ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಬದಲು ನಾವು lawyers, judges, everybody should think of the relief to the party as the important thing. ಅದನ್ನ ಆ ತರ ನಾವು ಮನಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ I think things will change. Hopefully they will change. ಇವಾಗ ಯಂಗ್ಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಒಳಗೆ ಅವರೇ ಬಹಳ ಎಂಥೂಸಿಯಾಸಮ್ ಇಂದ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸೀನ್ ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಯಂಗ್ಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್, ಬ್ರಿಲಿಯಂಟ್ ಪೀಪಲ್. ಮೊದಲ ತರ ಅಲ್ಲ. ನಮ್ಮ ಟೈಮ್ ನಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಸೀಟ್ ಸಿಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಸೀಟ್ ಸಿಗ್ಲಿಲ್ವಾ, ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸೀಟ್ ಸಿಗ್ಲಿಲ್ವಾ, ಲಾಗ್ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ ಅಂತ ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳು ನಾವು. ಇವಾಗ ಬರೋ ಹುಡುಗರು ಎಲ್ಲ ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಬೇಡ, ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಬೇಡ, ಯಾವುದು ಬೇಡ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ದೇ ಆರ್ ಚೂಸಿಂಗ್ ಲಾ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮಂತ ಸೀನಿಯರ್ಸ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಎಂಕರೇಜ್ ಮಾಡಿ they will really achieve something for the country. Thank you, Mr. Bhatt.
Thank you, sir. We have many more people raising their hand, but my apologies, due to time constraint, we will not be able to take up all those questions. Sir, thank you so much for an eye-opening session. On behalf of Advocates Association Bengaluru and all participants, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to you. Thank you so much, sir. I also take this opportunity to thank Honorable Mrs. Justice Pratibha Singh, Judge of the Delhi High Court, who's participated in today's webinar, and also Honorable Mr. Justice Guru Rajan, Honorable Mr. Justice Rangarajan, who have been part of this webinar. I also extend my thanks to all other judicial officers, learned senior advocates, and all other dignitaries who have been part of today's webinar. Thank you so much. Sir, with your permission, we'll be logging off the session. Thank you so much.